Hello everyone and welcome, it's Shanna. Now in today's video we're going to be making these 3 cards. They are fantastic. This is some new product from Hurley that you can pick up over in the Spellbinders shop. And we have got the Naughty and Nice 6x9 15-piece stamp set from Hurley. You've got some elves, a deer, and you've got a couple Santas, one with a list, one in the chimney. You've got ho ho ho. We've got another elf carrying packages. We've got the Naughty and Nice list. And several sentiments. Have a holly jolly holiday, believe in your elf, sending candy cane wishes, milestone kisses, have your elf a merry little Christmas, Santa Claus is coming to town, Santa checked his list twice, guess you didn't make it, and you're on the naughty list. And then we have the coordinating dies that Spellbinders has put together for it. And a couple of them will die cut out the sentiments, but some of the sentiments do not have coordinating dies. So this is the first set, Naughty or Nice. And you've got the December 25th one there that's kind of scrolly. I believe it has a die that goes with it. And then the next stamp set that I'm going to show you is called Christmas Pets. And it is also a 6x9 and it has 18 pieces. We've got cats and dogs on this. We've got this, we've also got a Christmas tree with a cat in it. We've got a dog in a package, a dog with a Santa hat, a cat elf. We've got a dog with reindeer antlers. We've got seasons, tweetings, meowie, hot dog, it's Christmas, have yourself a furry little Christmas, have a tremendous Christmas, you've been a good boy this year, and several other sentiments. Now this next stamp set is called Polar Friends, and it is a 17-piece stamp set. We've got the polar bear, a deer, we've got a couple of penguins, and another deer that's sitting down. We've got a tree, and we've got Jingle All the Way, Oh Dear It's Christmas, Merry Christmas, sending bear hugs and warm wishes, have a tremendous Christmas, it's penguining to look a lot like Christmas, and the coordinating dies. So this is what we're going to work with. I went ahead and stamped several of the images out from each of the 3 stamp sets, and I just used my VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink, and I used some clear embossing powder and embossed them. And I'm just going to bring in my Copic markers and do some very simple coloring on these. I have sped this up tremendously. I'm really just using a couple of colors on each area, so I'm not doing, much shading or anything like that. And so I just sped them up, and we're just using some very few colors. We've got some red, some green. I'm going to use one of my gray markers to do some shading because we've got a lot of white on these images because we've got the polar bear and then Santa with his hat and all of his white elements, and then our little dogs and cat. So I basically used R46 and R39 for my red is what I used. And then for my gray, I used a T1, which is just a toner gray, and used it. I don't have a lot of gray markers, and I just kept repeating the colors. I did bring in some green. I used a YG13 and colored it up, and then I brought in an E39 for the dog, and we used the gray for the cat. But very basic coloring. I'm not a colorist, so I don't spend a lot of time talking about my coloring. However, this was a really nice, enjoyable coloring session. I turned on some music, got up real early, was trying to sleep in for the weekend, and I don't successfully sleep in. Anyway, so I got up early and came into my craft room and just turned the light on and sat down and colored these up. I actually had stamped and heat embossed them the night before and had them ready. And I kind of cleaned up and organized my craft desk, and I just had them laying on there. And so then when I got up this morning, I just sat down, I grabbed the markers, I put them on the edge of my desk, and I just sat there and listened to some music and colored these in, and just had an enjoyable time. I think at one point I even stopped the music and started watching one of my YouTubers that I normally follow on Saturday mornings and did that, but was able to I really just took my time and just kind of had some fun coloring, and not much skill involved in it because I'm not a skilled colorist, but just had fun coloring, and I think they turned out pretty nice. But I did speed this up because it does take I think it was 35 minutes worth of coloring, and so I did speed it up so that you wouldn't have to sit and watch me go through all that. But anyway, so I'm just finishing up my little cat and my little dogs here, and this little dog has got some antlers, and I'm just giving him a red color, and then I'm going to do just a little bit of shading on some areas just to kind of add a little bit of dimension. And then we'll color up our little Santa dog. He's got like the Santa hat and the Santa jacket on. And so we'll get it colored up. And I just used one of my brown markers to just color him. And actually I used two because I did this lighter brown and then I decided to bring in a darker brown. And there you probably saw me grab my coffee cup. I was enjoying my first cup of coffee in the morning, so I was just sipping on that. Kind of passed by there really quickly, but this is where I'm laying that other color down because I decided I wanted him to be a little bit darker, and so I just darkened him up. And we'll get this little guy finished colored, and we'll be ready to start die cutting and then assembling our 3 cards. And I'll tell you, I'm just scratching the surface with the stamps that are included in the set because there are so many. In the polar bear, you've got 2 deer and 2 penguins and a Christmas tree that I didn't touch. And then for the Christmas pets, we've got the little cat with a wreath, and we've got a little box, a little dog coming out of a present that's super cute. And we have a Christmas tree with a cat in it, super cute as well. So now I'm just laying the dies down on it, and we'll get them taped up, and we'll go off camera and do some die cutting. I also, on the Naughty or Nice, I didn't use the Naughty or Nice list. We've got a little deer on there and a couple of cute little elves that would be super fun, and then Santa coming out of the chimney. So I've got lots of other stamps that I can work with this set, but I just wanted to pull a little bit from each of them and just kind of give you a little bit of a flavor for the stamp sets. So I'm just taking some of my best ever craft tape and taping these dies on here so they don't move while I'm die cutting them. Let's just give them a press, and I'm just going to get them all lined up on there. And I generally don't leave all of this in, but for whatever reason, I left this in. And so it is part of the process. I mean, this is part of creating. And so I'm just going to get these all taped up, and then we'll just move on to the other ones. Now, the banner for the sentiment, the Barely Christmas one, it has a die that die cuts it out. And the Christmas one that I'm going to put on the pet one has a die. Some of the sentiments have dies and some of them don't. So we'll get those laid down on here. And then the other ones I'll need to either fussy cut or just kind of straight line cut out. And so that's what I'll do. So I'm bringing in the other die set and just getting this great big die for the Santa with his list. And we're going to get him cut out. And I have stamped with him on there, you're on the naughty list, and then off camera I will stamp a secondary sentiment, so we'll have something for the inside, because I'm trying very hard to put my inside sentiments into my cards when I make them, so that later I don't have to go back through and do that. So now I'm just looking for the die set for the polar bear, and we'll grab that big die and get him laid down on there as well. These are some big images, they really are. So I'll use some more of that tape and get it lined up on there, and then we'll bring in that banner die as well and get it laid down on there, so we will have a berry Christmas. And this one is a shaker card. As I lifted it to reference what I had on it, you can hear the little shaker dots rolling around in there. So we'll just get this banner die laid down on there, and then we will get it die cut. We'll get all these pieces die cut out. For the inside of this card, I chose sending bear hugs and warm wishes for the inside of it, and I stamped it off camera with the other sub-sentiments, and we'll get everything die cut out. So here we are. We've got all of our pieces die cut out, and I've kind of got the sentiments kind of laying with the pieces that are going to go there. We're just going to start off with the Santa, and we're going to bring in an A2 size card base. Now you could certainly use 5x7s on these, because these are some big elements. And you know, if you wanted to add Santa with a Christmas tree, you know, I'd bring in a 5x7, and I would position the Christmas tree back behind him, and I might even bring in, it'd be fun to mix and mingle. You could bring in Santa with a Christmas tree behind, and then you could bring in that little box that has the dog popping out of it and put it under the tree. That would be a great scene for a larger 5x7 card. Lots and lots of ideas here. I'm giving myself ideas for my next videos, I think. So I brought in the embossing folder that went with the Dear Santa collection. I'm also bringing in the Dear Santa paper pad, and I'm going to use some pattern paper on these cards. I've chosen the Dear Santa paper for this. I thought this would look cute in the background, and I'm bringing in my arch die, and it's called the Color Block Accent Arches, and I'm going to just panel. I actually used a regular arch die, and I'm laying it on the inside of the Color Block Accent Arch die, and they pair up nicely. I think it's Perfect Touch Arches is what I'm laying on there. And then this is just going to be the little area that we're going to create our focal point on here. And I'm going to get it all put together before we lay it down on our card base, because I want to add some twine that I have to it. So we'll get Santa laid down on there, and we'll bring in some twine and add it to our scene. So just going to give him a press. I really like these Color Block Accent Arches. I've used them a couple times recently on my channel. When I first got them, I wasn't immediately drawn to them, but now that I've begun using them, I like them, and I think they're a fun addition. So I've got this baker's twine. It's just red and white, and I'm going to use those little notches, or those little teeth there, to kind of keep my baker's twine in place. I'm just going to nestle it between the same notch on either side, and then we'll just tie up a bow real quick. And I'm going to use my tweezers as my third hand just to clip this so that I can easily tie a bow. So I'll just bring in my little gold reverse tweezers, and we'll make a quick bow on here. And we've got a little extra texture and interest to our little panel. So there we go. And I just need to trim it off. One string's a little bit longer than the other side, so we'll just trim that off. I'm going to get some foam tape laid on the back of this, and we'll pop it up. I'm going to use the foam tape since I've got that piece of string back there, and it'll just kind of help level everything off, and we won't have a little bump. So I'm just putting down the last little bit of foam tape on there, and we're going to pull off these strips, and then we'll get it laid down on our card base. And our first card will be mostly completed. I'm going to put a little glue on there just so if my foam doesn't adhere well, we won't have to worry about it falling off my 3D embossed panel. I will link all of the materials in the description box below so you can check it out and shop with the links if you would. It greatly helps my channel. So I'm just pulling off the backer on there. I've just got some thin strips on there. I'm going to put "You're on the naughty list" on the front of this card, and we'll get it laid down on there. And we've got lots of dimension with our embossed panel, and we've got, you know, some foam on there, and then our string. And so we're just going to add to the inside. Santa checked his list twice. Guess who didn't make it? Question mark. And that's going to be our sentiment for the inside. Very fun, a little punny sentiment set, and it's super cute. So next we're going to move on to our polar bear, which is going to be our shaker card. And I'm going to use the remnants of where I die cut that frame out. And I brought in some acetate. This is some acetate that my friend Daria sent to me. And it's got snowflakes on there. And we're going to create a shaker card with a little snowy scene. And I've just got some Spellbinders cardstock there in green. I think this is fern. And I'm going to glue it up and lay it down. I'm not going to emboss it or anything like that because I plan to make it a shaker. And so it's kind of nice to have more of a flat surface when you've got little bits and pieces in there. So I'm going to get it laid down on my card base, and I've already got foam tape on the back of this. I used some double-sided tape to adhere my acetate to it, and then just use some thin foam. And we're going to lay our polar bear down. I'm going to try and get it in the center, and then we'll bring in our shaker panel after it. Now you can see I've stamped the polar bear upside down on the back of that. The first time I went to stamp that last night, it shifted on me, and when I lifted the stamps up, and when I moved it back, I thought I had pushed it up into the corner of the Misty, but I didn't, so I had to just flip it over and stamp on the back. Didn't want to waste the cardstock, so I just flipped everything over and re-stamped everything on the back side of that cardstock. And no one will ever know. So I'm going to pull off these strip sheets. I pulled them all off except the top one. And I'm going to get it laid down on here, try and get it nice and straight. And I'm not pulling off the top one because I want to put shaker beads on the inside of that. And it'll just be easier if I can just kind of pull that open and put them in that way. Because these things go everywhere. If you watched my last video in which I used the shaker bits, I had them all over the place. So I've got this container from Spellbinders. This is perfect for keeping your little bits in. And you've got stackables, and they just lay in there nicely. And I've got this whole stack of Christmas beads here, and I'm going to stare at it for a good while and ponder and trying to decide which ones I want to use. I've got clay bits I've got the shaker dots and a variety of different things in there. And I was debating on what I wanted to use, and then I decided that I would use the dot mix that is red, white, and green, and I think it will look really good with this card. So I'm just going to pour some out into my triangle tray, and then I'll just open that little gap there and just pour these right in. They went in very nicely and cleanly, and I did not make a mess. I've got that little strip of the backer sheet, and I just pulled it off, giving it a very good press so none of them sneak out. And we've got a lot of shaker dots in there, and it makes a super fun sound. Let me give it a shake here. And so I decided that I needed more for this. I've got the Merry Christmas sentiment banner that I'm going to lay down on there, but I thought it looked kind of plain. So off camera, I did stamp the snowflakes that are included with this set. Excuse me. There are 3 of those, and they're 3 different prints. And so I did all 3 of them, and I die cut all 3 of them. And I just used some black ink and stamped them. And we're going to add this for just some additional embellishment to this card. And so we'll just glue them straight down on there, and it will just add some additional interest, and it's not so plain, and I think it comes together pretty nice. So we'll glue this one up, and we'll get it laid down here in the bottom left-hand corner. And then we've got the sentiment for the inside, and we're going to get it laid down in there, and I'm going to have this card completed as well. So we'll give it a good press. I'm going to give it a shake, and we're going to move on to our Christmas pets. Now, I loved all of them, so I chose to do 3 of them, and I know it's going to be a little bit crowded, but we're going to make it work. I just thought they were so adorable. I thought the little cat elf was so cute, and then the 2 little dogs were just super cute. And then there is the dash hound, and that goes with the dash hound through the snow sentiment that goes on it, and he's got little lights draped all the way around him, and then we've got the little kitty kind of poking out of the Christmas tree, as well as the kitty with the wreath. Just a super fun set, and then the little dog with the box that I referred to earlier. But I just used some Spellbinders Raven cardstock, and I gut the middle out of it, so that's why we've got a white square showing there. Don't like to waste that cardstock, so I just took one of my nesting dies, I just gut it out, and I laid it aside. I actually used it on some die cutting for my next video. And I brought in some poppy cardstock, and I brought in some polka dot pattern paper from the Dear Santa 6x6 pattern paper and used it. I thought it would be fun since I've kind of got a variety of colors on my little Christmas pets. So I chose to do that polka dot that had a variety of colors on it, and I thought it would tie everything in nicely. So I'm just getting this lined up on there and just giving it a good press. I did use that embossing folder for that black panel as well, just to add some extra interest. And I'm just going to lay my little Christmas pets on here like this and get my Have Yourself a Furry Little Christmas sentiment laid. And this is how we're going to position them. So I'll just get them glued up and get them laid down on there. I'm going to push them a little bit more toward the left than what I originally laid on there, because I want to make sure I have plenty of space for my sentiment and to position my little cat. And I decided for my little Dalmatian dog that I would just pop him up with his little reindeer antlers on there. And we'll just bring in some foam squares. I'm going to cut some small ones in half to put on the antlers just so they don't get bent, and they'll look nice when the card is presented to whomever. And I'm getting a good little stash of Christmas cards already made, so I'm excited that I'm well on my way, and I've got several made already, and I'm going to just keep going. But, you know, I send out over 100 cards, and I make even more than that, so I'm happy to get started on them, get them going. So I did just cut out the Have Yourself a Furry Little with my scissors and just kind of made some straight lines. The Christmas had the die to go with it, and I put some foam tape on both of them, and we'll get them laid down on here. And I'm just trying to get a straight line on my glass mat so that I can try and get these laid down on there straight and have them on there even. So we'll pull off the backer pieces on this, and we'll get this one laid down on there. I think it turned out really nice. And then for the inside of this card, I chose the Happy Holidays, like the dog's howling. And we'll get it laid down on there. And we've got another kind of fun, cute, punny card. I was thinking maybe my grandkids, I might send this to their house. They would like it because they have both dog and cat. So I've got my Santa, I've got my polar bear, and I've got my Christmas pets. Super fun. I hope you like them. I took a picture of each one so that you could see it close up and check it out. If you like, consider hitting that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd ask that you would subscribe. I would love to have you join my channel. And I really appreciate you watching. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.